quickly from Zion University. And basically, Animation 1, Animation 2 or Animation 3, both of these apply. Um, what we're getting into is that we're getting into making a final short animation, basically talking about how to set up your assets, how to set up your workflow. I happen to use, in this case, After Effects to composite everything, to create scenes, which you can either use subcompositions in After Effects to create more complex compositions, or you can just render things out in After Effects and use them in Premiere. That's another tutorial. This is merely how to make your set up your workflow to be more efficient and make your life easier. So basically, in this semester, we have been going through story and character development, going from storyboards to animatics, which is actually where we are right now. I've been showing how to do logo reveals, and there's a thing called a parallax exercise, which is really just doing a multi-layered composition using assets from different programs to show how you can make a complex animation scene with a lot more ease. Now we're getting into the production workflow. Some of the exercises we'll be doing are music and sound editing. Those are other tutorials, some end credits, and actually, if you were in my class, there'd be lots of little techniques like doing just field of view pushes, just doing little establishing zooms, just little things that can fit with your narrative. And actually, in this case, I'm going to say, the much less complex visual narrative elements that you can just basically turn around in an afternoon, and so you can work on the more complex things. And anyway, you don't need to worry about the fact that we're showing on 10th. And I like to put myself forward as Professor Aku. So anyway, never mind, from Samurai Jack. So anyway, basically we're just talking about organizing shots and thinking about how you're animating. So we came from the animatic, which is just a sketch of the animation. In other words, it's moving. Maybe it just might be going from frame to frame to frame. But as you can see, you have a fully formed animation over on the right-hand side. And it resembles the animatic, but the thing is, it's a fully animated thing, and really what happens is that the animatic is really just a motion sketching time of what you're doing. As you can see, actually, down in the second example, this is actually much closer than the first one, but as they say, results will vary in how you're working. An animatic isn't a slideshow. One thing that beginning students have a problem with is basically that they'll take the images from their storyboard and just drop them in and just put them in as the default 5 seconds that After Effects does, and just say, oh, that's fine. I said, no, actually, that's not an animatic. That's a slideshow. And I'll put this URL for this piece here. It's a little technical, but the one thing that we need to think about is we need to think about visual rhythm in terms of how it tells a story, because I think more actions are going to take less time than things that show like, okay, I'm walking from Abu Dhabi to Ras Al Khaimah, and it's that's gonna take a long time, and you need to show that in terms of time. And by the way, for my future students in America, um, these are Emirates in the United Arab Emirates in I'd call Greater Arabia. Um, so let's see the next one here. So I mean, if you want to see a radical example, this is a professional timeline, and you can see these clips just don't have equal distances. They're not on screen at the same time, and really, if you've just got everything 5 seconds, it's just a slideshow. So come on. Anyway, so what happens is that we're getting organized. And this is something that I've been teaching and talking about in a lot of my talks for a while. We're talking about organizing your shots from your storyboards, setting up your timing, setting up your assets. What are assets? And then when you get down into it, you animate your keys, animate your breakdowns, and it sounds a little too simple. It is. I'm going to get into this in a another in the next video. So basically, I'm going to just talk about how to simplify things, and then I'll talk about how to set up a shot and do your breakdowns and keys and so on. Between this video and the next video, I'm going to give a URL to Alan Becker's animation from Frank Thompson and Ollie Johnson's Principles of Animation, basically having to do on straight ahead versus pose to pose animation, and this is what I'm going to get at. And then in the next video, I'm going to talk to you about how this is done. Okay, shot organization. A lot of students tend to just set up their shots, set up their timing, and just go from they go in a linear fashion. They go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. But this is probably one of the worst methodologies possible. And you might be sitting there being shocked. Say, why? Because what happens is that some of the things that you should be spending the most time on, you're not addressing them in a logical fashion. They could be at the beginning, at the end, in the middle, and you want to be able to take a logical amount of time on the more complex shots. And really, honestly, you just want to get the easy stuff done. So what I'm looking at here is that I've basically gone to my storyboard, and I have taken apart my shots. I've looking at the complexity. I have at the lowest priority, basically get these done, get these out. These are like maybe pan shots of a background, maybe a little thing of like a little hill in the background, a background in the background where the background should be, and maybe a little motorcycle coming out from behind a hill. No big deal. That's something you could do in maybe an hour if you had the assets. So here we have maybe some basic character animations, not a lot of complex stuff. This might take you maybe 2-3 times as long as this other stuff. And then here we have this shot of Tom and Jerry, and you can see that this is a very complex, involved animation. And this is really where you need to sit down and get this other stuff out of the road, and then focus on this stuff and work on how to get this done. So this is basically saying organizing and prioritizing. So as I said, here's the shot timing. It isn't like this, and then it makes sense. You've got a rhythm. You've got how things are going, because what is it? They say that life is 98% boredom with 2%, 98% boredom intermixed with 2% excitement, anxiety, and panic. Well, maybe not for your lives, but it's just a story. Anyway, okay. If you remember the anatomy of a cell in the old school, back before I was doing it actually, but they still do it this way, in kind of like the artisan shops and things like that. You have a background, you have some character animation, you might have some props, and then you may have some things in the foreground. We're going to do this, we've done this already with the parallax exercise in After Effects. And this is also in our playlist. So, and I'm just going to go over it again really quick. So once again, you can see here, you've got your character cell, background, and you composite them with the camera, which, by the way, is now After Effects, and you've got a composite image. So these are all assets. Background, characters, items in a shot, all assets. So the thing is, it's interesting. I'm going to repeat this a couple times. You could have done the background in Photoshop. You could have done the trees in Illustrator, and you could have done the cat in Procreate on a transparent background, and all these on transparent backgrounds. You don't have to use one program to do everything. I like to you can composite in many programs. You could use Flame, but if you're a really high-end shop, you can composite. You can put things together in After Effects, which is my preference. You can do it in Premiere. You can even do it in Photoshop, but I think that's actually really time-consuming. And to be perfectly honest, I don't like time-consuming. It drives me crazy. I want to basically go from my vision to that screen in the minimum amount of time. So you put these together, and you can see all of these together in a scene. You can see the cat here. This is the end of this. This is a little After Effects scene, and you can see where the trees are on the bottom layers and the background. And I have a little shape layer. I have a little shape. Actually, I do something kind of interesting, is that when I do something, excuse me, to create depth, I will sometimes put a couple little 5% opaque shapes in between each layer, just to kind of give a sense of aerial perspective, because with aerial perspective, things fade out as they go into the background. And so I'll either use white or black, and the background gets less indistinct, and the foreground is more distinct, and it pops things out a little more. And in the parallax animation exercise, I go through this. Take a look out on the playlist. So here's the result. The cat's from Procreate, the trees are from Illustrator, the background is from Photoshop. You don't need one program. So let's take a look at this. This is my little piece. And this is kind of cheesy. The interesting thing is that you've got the background moving at one rate, you've got these trees moving at another rate, and you've got some of the trees in the background moving at another rate. And then the plants in the foreground in front of the cat moving forward. So, important learning point on this. The cat is basically just a run cycle that I've repeated in After Effects. It's only like 5 or 6 frames. And then each of these are just from Photoshop or Illustrator, and I only use 2 keyframes on each of them. This is not a lot of work. So, and I hope you think it looks good. So, and I put this together in about an hour after I had the assets. And I'll be perfectly honest, a couple assets I found, but this is for educational purposes. If you're doing something, either buy your assets, and if you're in university, you probably should be making all your own. and I'm being a little funny. So let's talk about having an easier life. Think about how you can make your assets to make your life easier. You can repeat and scale trees. You can concentrate on frame animations with characters that have characters and animals only, and so on. So you can just basically take the things that have less animation and less detail, get those done, get those out of the road, and then go in and focus on the things that are central to the narrative, with a lot of action, a lot of interaction, and all that. So the point is, and this isn't necessarily clear, but you can see all of these assets here. I have the background, I have another background, but I'm just saying you can see that this background is repeated over all these long shots. I've got the different trees and that sort of thing in these sort of medium shots, medium complexity shots. And then I've got this one complex shot, that we had before. You can reuse, resize, and duplicate assets to reduce your workload. But the thing is that you have to be organized. And I think I'm also going to talk about shot lists as well. And this is one thing, is that you can make a list of all your shots, so you can organize them and see how complex they are, and then figure out what you're going to do here. So I'll assign some videos on shot lists. So what I've really been talking about is doing things sort of in After Effects. We could probably talk about how to organize your workflow in Photoshop. I don't animate in Procreate per se, and I know more people are, but we don't know every program. I mean, we're not covering Toon Boom or boards or anything like that, and so can't know everything. So these are the principles. So what I'm looking at here is that then also, this is just a side thing, saying that if you need to, with here and there, just as long as it isn't too incredibly obvious, like this plant here, you could probably go get a little piece of clip art and just kind of pop it in there. And it isn't going to take away from your own personal vision unless the style is so totally different, and then you just have to do everything yourself. So it's okay. So my expectations. We've got about 6 weeks until we're done. Get started. Next video, I'm going to talk about my version of Alan Becker's video of keyframe versus pose-to-pose as setting up your animation. So this is Patrick Lichty in fall 2020. Go watch Alan Becker's pose-to-pose piece, and then come back and watch the next video. Thanks.